How do I know that you work in ELT without asking you if you work in ELT? I think at some point I will hear you say something like, I don't care about the money, I'm not in it for the money. Hi, I'm Nicola, and I run a website and a business called The Chilled Investor. And I do talk about money in ELT, and I help people in ELT learn about money, learn what they can do with it, and grow it for the future. Why don't we talk about money in ELT? I think there's lots of reasons. And the important thing is to realize what those reasons are and then work out how we can start talking about money. Because I think what a lot of us think is that if we start talking about money, what that means is that we're going to be like some horrible city banker bragging about how much salary we have. And of course, we don't have high salaries in ELT. And even if we did, I think we would do anything rather than brag about it. But it doesn't have to be like that. We can talk about money in a way that is productive, that is useful, that is not bragging, that is just going to help us. And ultimately, it'll help us stay in the profession because lots of people get driven out because they just can't afford real life. Once the backpacking stops in TEFL, then we are faced with exactly the same bills as everybody else. And if you want to retire one day, then you do need to be thinking about money. That means talking about it, because if you don't plan for retirement, you are not retiring, okay? And I don't think any of us want to work until we die. So why don't we talk about money in ELT? I think it's partly to do with education and the sector that we are in. Education is a vocation. You do it to help people, and lots of helping professions, I think nursing would be another good example, caring would be another good example, is that we don't talk about money because we are not in it for the money. We want to help people. And then that becomes, over time, a stigma around talking about money, that if you talk about it, you're going to look greedy or like you stopped caring. I'm sure you've heard the meme, we're in it for the outcome, not the income. But you can have good outcomes for your students and also good income for yourself, and there's nothing to be ashamed about with that. We fall into the trap of what I call the nobility of poverty, where it almost becomes a badge of honor to not earn a lot of money and to not care. But there's nothing noble about being poor or rich. Money itself is neutral. It's a tool that we use to make our lives more comfortable. I think another reason we don't talk about money is because most of us are from an arts background. Maths might be something that has a bad memory for us. We might not like numbers. We might be afraid of them. We might think that as soon as we start talking about money, we have to kind of be the same type of person who went and studied finance and became a corporate banker. So we're not really that comfortable in that arena. And so we don't talk about it. Another reason we don't talk about money is because we don't tend to have a lot of it. Not if you're a teacher, if you're an ELT materials writer, if you're an editor. There are certainly roles in ELT, and certainly if you've got your own business, you can start earning more money. But in general, we tend to be surrounded by other people like us that have low incomes. And so we kind of normalize this idea that no one's got any money, and then it kind of goes unspoken. Or maybe it's kind of okay to like laugh about it, joke about it, how you've got no money. But I don't think you'll be laughing if you are, as in the case of somebody I worked with in summer school a couple of years ago, 76 years old, working 6 days a week at summer school, having to lead teenagers on excursions and not comfortable at all in that environment. If you want to stop working one day, you need to be talking about money. We also don't talk about money because we develop what's called a scarcity mindset. If you think that not a lot of money is coming your way and that you're not going to ever have a lot of it, you can develop a scarcity mindset where you are afraid of losing anything that you do have, so you don't want to risk it in any way, and you just get locked into this cycle of making it month to month because money is scarce, and you develop a scarcity mindset around it. The truth is, if you know where to put even just a little bit of your money every month, it will grow and it will grow and it will grow and it will grow. Money is actually a thing that can be abundant. And I'm not talking about this kind of hippie universe idea of abundance. I'm talking about simple accounts where you put your money and the interest grows on the interest, grows on the interest. That's a very powerful formula. It's called compound interest, and it works for everybody. It works for you if you've got a lot of money. It works for you if you've got not very much money. It will grow your money beyond what you can do with it if you're just holding on to it because you're afraid of losing it. And another big thing, which I think is a flaw in the whole industry, is we are not encouraged to talk about money. You never get any, or I at least never had any guidance or input throughout my TEFL career, which was at least 12 years of teaching in private language academies, a couple of little bits at university. And nobody ever gave me an input session or training session on things like the state pension in the countries where I was working, about maybe how I could think about a private pension plan and get a tax deduction on my tax bill at the end of the year. Nobody mentioned the word money. So of course they never mentioned the word pensions or interest or savings. And a lot of people will argue that's not the place of the employer to tell people that. But I think in ELT, when we are constantly moving outside of our country, where we might get kind of supported by the infrastructures that we naturally fall into when we're in our own country, that there is a sort of duty of care from employers, from TEFL providers. When you get your TEFL certificate, they could talk to you about how you can prepare financially for the future, rather than just living month to month off your salary and then working in the summers to try to make up for the fact you didn't earn much over the year. And I think that this is a topic that's not mentioned at conferences or any kind of training that we ever get. We're always trained how to be a better teacher, and we're encouraged to go the Delta route or a master's, which is the one I did, where you become an even better teacher, but you're still probably not going to earn that much more money, even if you have the Delta or the master's. Nobody ever tells you about any of this stuff because we're not talking about money. I think that employers don't want to talk about it, because if they start talking about money and they start talking about pensions, then you might wonder why you haven't got an employee pension plan like you might have if you were, for example, working in the UK, where that's mandatory. Because I can tell you, if you are working for a language chain that has offices or branches in the UK, for example, those employees will be enrolled in a mandatory pension plan. And if you're working in Spain or Poland or somewhere for that same chain and you are not enrolled in a pension plan because it's not mandatory, then you are in effect being paid less. But it's future you that's really going to suffer, because if your employer is not putting into a pension plan for you, then you are not going to have that retirement income in the future. Your employer's not going to tell you about this because they don't want you asking questions. And they also don't want you to start asking too much about why you're not earning very much money, because I'm sure you're not. So what can we do about this? How can we start talking about money in a way that's not obnoxious? Well, that's what this channel is for. It's to start trying to give you information. It's start trying to make that conversation be okay. And I think the next time you hear yourself, you catch yourself saying, I don't care about the income, say something else. Say, I care about having a life that's not stressful because of money. And then once you start talking about money, you're able to start talking about things like saving, like budgeting, like pensions and retirement and investing. So investing is just putting money in some places where it can grow for you. And these don't have to be high risk things. But once you have a conversation that is able to cover all of these topics, you start looking at how to be financially secure. It can also cover things like mortgages. You might want to start talking about that, whether you buy a house or not, which is, I think, the one area where people do start talking about money in ELT. Most people will either decide that they want to buy a house or that they can't buy a house. But there are other ways to make money work for you. It isn't always just about buying a house. I think that's quite a limited way of looking at it. So follow this channel. You can find me also on LinkedIn. You can find me at my website, www.chilledinvestor.com, and you can start thinking about money. You can start talking about it with people that you work with maybe, or your friends, and start thinking about how you can look after yourself in the future and how you can make the most of your money now. And at no point do you ever have to brag about how much is in your bank account.